So today I want to review the Double or Nothing card. And I also just want to mention a few things that some of the matches have been announced last night because they did a collision taping after the show ended, but they're going to air it on Thursday night. And then the other thing I want to mention is that as I'm going to give you guys my predictions, I'm actually going to talk about, if the show is actually worth it. And I'm actually going to go fly from Hartford, Connecticut, all the way down to the Glendale Arena and watch the show in person. And I spent roughly $230 on a ticket. And I'm also going to tell you if I feel like it's going to be worth my investment. So the first match on the card was announced on the Collision spoilers, and that's Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford versus Anna Jay and Harley Cameron. So the first thing that I do want to say is, I'm okay with this match because, Harley Cameron is somebody that I feel is still salvageable because I know that for many, many months, I've been like pleading with AEW, give Harley Cameron pay-per-view matches, treat her and Billy Starks like these underdog wrestlers. But I do feel that maybe what's going to happen, unfortunately, is that she's probably going to do like dumb comedy stuff, because that's just who she is. So I'm happy with this match because Harley Cameron gets a pay-per-view vibe. And also with Megan Bayne and Anna Jay, these three ladies, are actually people who could be, the women's champion one day. And so I'm happy they're being featured. So that is a positive. So, yes, I am looking forward to this match. But my prediction's going to be Megan Bayne to win because they've been building her up as a monster. So you really just can't give like her like downwards momentum really. And I actually think that you can do Megan Bayne versus Athena for the AEW ROH Women's Championship, at All In or at Death Before Dishonor, just to give her direction. And they also have to get the title off of Athena because what she's not really been doing anything with it. I know she's been holding up Ring of Honor, but it's almost like you have to kind of cause some changes. She can't be champion forever, so it's just not helpful just to have it go on and on and on forever, really. So I think that Megan Bayne's going to win, but I do hope that the future plans we get I hope the future plans that we get to Megan Bayne versus Mercedes Moné or another wrestler. We get to Mercedes Moné. No, we get to Megan Bayne versus Athena, or we get to Athena versus another wrestler because she has to drop the title this year. They have to kind of do something different with Ring of Honor, really. But I think that they're going to make Megan Bayne look strong, and hopefully they take my booking idea. So the next match that was announced for a Collision is the Undisputed Kingdom, which includes Adam Cole and two other people in his group. I believe it's like Daddy Magic and Kyle O'Reilly, if I'm correct. But like three of them versus the Don Callis family. I believe it's going to be, Takeshita, Josh Alexander, and, Kyle Fletcher. So I'm happy with this match because obviously the Don Callis family do a really great job. They have really great matches. This is also really good because they're not going back to Will Ospreay. They have to give Will Ospreay a break. They can't be Team Rocket, like, this group of three people, Jesse, James, and Meowth going after Ash Ketchum, in other words, in this case, Will Ospreay. So this is a great way of saying that they're done with Will Ospreay. They moved on. They're focused on different things. I've said this many times about the Don Callis family. They need one or two things. They need the trios titles. They can be a good trios heel team, or this can lead to Kyle Fletcher versus Adam Cole and making Kyle Fletcher like a heel with the TNT Championship. So I think that that's good. So I'm really happy to see this match. It's great. It's a great match because you really need to, give. You need to give, like Don Callis family and the SP Kingdom a different feud. Get them away from MJF. Get them away from Will Ospreay and see what happens, really. And I really think that with this match, I will give it to the Undisputed Kingdom for like two reasons. That number one is that you may have a lot of heels win tonight, so you can't always do that. And then also too that with the Don Callis family, it will not hurt them to lose because you can always do a post-match beatdown with Kyle Fletcher and on Adam Cole and set up a match really. And I think that that's what they can do. But I do think that that's the best thing. And then also too that with the Don Callis family, like they've always been like winning and losing a lot, so they can handle losses I think with the Undisputed Kingdom, you got to give them like a bit of a victory. You got to have some good guys win. So I think that's good. And now I want to get to the match that are already announced. So Jamie Hayter versus Mercedes Moné for the Owen Hart um, tournament. And I would say that I do not like Jamie Hayter. Like there's really no story with her. Like, I understand what they're trying to say is that, she was champion before, I believe, and she stepped away for a while. And Mercedes Moné is like the privileged bitch and everything like that. She sees through people, meaning that, oh, well, you're not a challenge for Mercedes. So it really feels like that this match is just, well, is this gonna be like one where Mercedes Moné is gonna be like, hey, you know what, you gave me a good challenge, really. So that's not really a good story. So I think that if they did something like Jamie Hayter was like, you know what, I'm this underdog, and I'm overcoming, and I want to overcome like the top woman in the division. You run here like your shit don't stink and everything like that. Then that kind of would be the good dynamic, really. So I just feel. I honestly feel that that's the story that they should tell, and they're not doing that. I honestly think if you did Harley Cameron versus Mercedes Moné and kind of did like, that type of the underdog and the person who's becoming more serious and that character transformation versus Mercedes, I think you would have had a stronger emotional story and more emotional beats, really. But I don't think Jamie Hayter is. I don't think Jamie Hayter has that. And I think 100%, if you want to make money, if you want to do the right thing, if you want a match that feels like a all-in WrestleMania level match, you have to have Mercedes win. It will be extremely, extremely, extremely stupid if you do Mercedes Moné losing this match and then you say, hey, she's going to defend her title against, maybe Harley Cameron or somebody else at All In. Jamie Hayter versus Tony Storm, that's an okay match. I would save that for Forbidden Door because Jamie Hayter is British, but I would not do that match at All In. And Mercedes Moné being like this popular entitled bitch, her shit don't stink, and this privileged girl and Tony Storm who had to reinvent herself and become a character and have all these really great matches and do the blood, sweat, and tears types of matches and all that stuff. And Mercedes have not done that. There is that's kind of a good entitlement versus somebody who had to grind and work hard type of match, really. So I think that for those reasons, I would say Mercedes Moné is going to win, and how winning would help her and what type of feud that you can do with Tony Storm. I would also say that again. Mercedes Moné is not a great character. She's kind of bland. She's repetitive, but she has really great matches. She's almost like a Ric Flair with no charisma. That's the best way to say it. He has the great matches. Woo! But Mercedes doesn't have his woo charisma. That's kind of the best way to say it, really. So, like I said, it's an all right match. I don't mind watching it, but it's not something that is going to make me head over heels. We kind of know how it's going to go. So the next match is FTR versus Daniel Garcia and Nigel McGuinness. I'm actually happy to see this match because Daniel Garcia has a lot of potential. He talks very well on the microphone. He has kind of like that angst. He has that bravado. He has like that that young lion fighting spirit. So I really think he needs another chance with, another chance. I think they need to give him like a tag team title reign, or I think that they need to work on him as far as a tag team wrestler to see what he can kind of do. So yeah, I'm happy with Daniel Garcia, just getting another shot with a tag in a tag team title division. So we'll see what happens with that. So that's a positive. I predict FTR is going to win because they've been wrestling for a long time. They're veterans. And ultimately, you can set up FTR versus the Hurt Syndicate, or, you can do FTR versus Bobby Lashley and FTR versus Bobby Lashley and also MJF. You can do that, or you can do like Shelton, MJF, Bobby Lashley versus FTR and Stokely Hathaway. And that kind of seems like a match that they would have at AEW All In, because, MJF likes the comedy, so does Stokely. So I think they're going to step to that match. Or they could do something where MJF betrays the Hurt Syndicate, and then what happens is that you have Lashley versus MJF, and then for the tag team titles, you have FTR versus Swerve and Hangman, because there's predictions that they want to make Swerve and Hangman a tag team. So I think that, that's what's going to happen. I think FTR is going to win, and I think that, Daniel Garcia and Nigel McGuinness, they're going to keep wrestling, and they're going to, keep being on the roster. The other thing is that Nigel McGuinness is a Ring of Honor wrestler, so you can easily do Garcia and Nigel McGuinness versus the Sons of Texas, because I don't imagine the Sons of Texas to win. So that's what I would kind of say. That I think that my money would be on FTR. But, this is an okay match. I think Daniel Garcia needs to shine. He needs more, time in the microphone. You need to give him, the rest of the year to say, hey, is he really, worth his investment? And if not, then you got to just nix him. The next match is the Hurt Syndicate versus the Sons of Texas. And, 100%, this is a match that I know the Hurt Syndicate is going to win. There's no way that you're going to have MJF mess things up for the Hurt Syndicate right now, because that would be the only way for them to lose. And then also, too, that I do think that the Sons of Texas, they should have a match on All In. I think they're going to have, an opening match on the card, because obviously Dustin is a Texas boy. Or you might do Dustin defending the ROH Trios title at All In, because, he's a Texas guy. He may be close to retirement, but I don't think the thing to do to Dustin is to put the tag team titles on him. So I think they're going to have something else for Dustin, because, you need to kind of give him something. Texas is his home state, and he does deserve to have some, recognition, really. I would put money on the Hurt Syndicate winning and beating the Sons of Texas. That seems like, the right thing to do. And I think that the Hurt Syndicate is very, very popular right now. And, people like the we hurt people thing. So it's just too early to take the tag team titles off of them. But it's gonna be a really, really great match, and we're gonna see what happens. The next match is Toni Storm versus Maria Shirakawa. Toni Storm is obviously gonna win. Maria Shirakawa is a really great wrestler. But I do think that the problem with Mina and Toni is that, they both do a lot of sexual comedy. And like I said, I have no problem with that, but it does get very, very repetitive, So I think they're going to do a lot of the jiggly boobies and all that type of thing, really. I think that, like I said before, they do that too many times. It just becomes the Conway Twitty gag. But Toni Storm's obviously winning. There's no way that Mina Shirakawa versus Mercedes Moné or Mina Shirakawa versus Jamie Hayter is a marketable match for AEW for AEW All In. So you got to have Toni Storm, she's the one to do it. Mercedes versus Mercedes versus Moné. No, Moné versus Toni. Moné versus Toni. Mercedes versus Toni. Mercedes versus Toni is the match that will make money. Mercedes versus Toni is the match that will make money. So that's why Toni Storm's going to win. And then you have Ricochet versus Mark Briscoe. Then Toni Storm versus Mina Shirakawa. Again, I don't really care about this match. It is what it is. It's passable, but I don't really care about it. It's like a C- match. Mark Briscoe versus Ricochet stretcher match. I'm not happy that this match is happening, because you're going to have the Anarchy in the arena. So it doesn't make sense to have a match with a stretcher and do hardcore stuff, especially with the Anarchy in the arena, where it's going to be 40, 50 minutes of that. So it kind of feels a little bit repetitive. But I do feel Ricochet's going to win, because you can make Ricochet the TNT champion, and then you got to have some momentum. And then you're kind of teasing Anthony Bowens versus Ricochet in a feud. So I do think that Ricochet's going to win, and it's going to lead to something. And then you can have Anthony Bowens come out and attack Ricochet, because you got to have Anthony Bowens, be built up, really. So you can do Anthony Bowens versus Ricochet at All In, and just have a longer match, and, start making Anthony Bowens beating a lot of heels like Kyle Fletcher and other people on the roster, really just elevate him. So I think Ricochet's going to win for that reason. And then I'm going to go to Speedball Mike Bailey versus Okada for the Continental Championship. And again, I really think that, like I said, I would have done Anthony Bowens. I'm not Speedball Mike Bailey, because he's just new. He's had some really good matches. He's very committed. but I don't think he's ready for a championship. I think he's like a little too new to the company. So you know that Okada is obviously going to win. They want to do Omega versus Okada. And I also feel that Speedball is way too new to this. So, it's going to be an all right match. It's going to be like an athletic, toward force type of match, really. And, Okada, yes, he needs to start defending his title. If you want to make him look legitimate for AEW All In, he has to start defending his title he needs to start defending his title on AEW pay-per-views. He can't go a long stretch without defending. So I give him credit for that. But that Speedball is losing this one. So Okada is going to win. Okay, passable match. That just means that, I'm not for it against it. It's 50-50 for me. And usually when I say that, that means the match is like a C-. Anarchy in the Arena is going to be Team AEW. Omega, Swerve, Willow, Joe, Hobbs, and Shibata versus Team Death Riders and Bucks. So the Death Bucks, So it's going to be Moxley, Claudio, Marina, Wheeler, and the Young Bucks. So I know a lot of people are controversial about this. So there's some people saying that, it feels forced. They shouldn't be doing this every single year. There are some people who say this is going to be off the fucking wall, hardcore stuff. And a lot of people are saying that Marina Shafir and Willow could lead to a feud. This could be moment-making stuff. And then other people are afraid because then you can have Eddie Kingston show up. Then you can have you can have Eddie Kingston show up. You can have Hangman show up. You can have Gabe Kidd show up. You can have Orange Cassidy and a few other of the original Team AEW show up, like Jeff Jarrett, Satnam Singh, the Dark Order. So this can turn into a big clusterfuck match. You can have I forgot his name, Jay White show up, and that other guy he hangs out with, like the guy with like the big glasses who looks like Macho Man, that hangs out with him, So you can like set up, you can kind of turn this into like a 6 versus 6 or like a 12 versus 12 type of thing. I'm okay with this. I like Anarchy in the Arena. I like the hardcore off the wall type of match. So I really think that this is the match I want to see. This is one of the reasons why I'm going down there. But I really think that you're gonna have the Death Riders and the Young Bucks win. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you can set up, because if you have any interference, you can honestly set up Blood and Guts. And they will do Blood and Guts this year because that's one of their draws. That's one of their television specials. That's one of the reasons. It's almost like a television level pay-per-view. So I totally believe 100% that they are really, really going to just, have them win so they can set up Blood and Guts like a one more type of thing, really. And then it's also good because then if you're going to do a lot of matches between these guys on All In, you got to make the heels look really, really strong, and you got to do a lot of great stuff, really. So I think that kind of just putting more heat on the heels is helpful, but you also got to make it so they get all like beaten down, really, because I don't want to see the main event having any interference. And then the main event, it's going to be Hangman versus Ospreay for the Owen Hart match. So this is the match you 100% want to see. This is kind of like, the main event, the drawing power match. And I would honestly say that I'm going to be controversial. I'm going to say that they're both going to lose, or they're both going to lose, or there's going to be interference, and it's going to be a triple threat. I think that they're going to do a triple threat at AEW All In, and I know that's a really stupid idea, but AEW likes to do things that are unpredictable. You might have a lot of interference. So I really think that number one, that'll be my first prediction. If I was to bet $100 to fuck off, really, I would say I would bet money on. I would bet a lot of money on it being a triple threat because nobody's going to really bet money on that. And my second prediction is going to be Hangman Adam Page. And the reason why I say Hangman is because that's the better story. And I also will say that Ospreay versus Moxley or Ospreay versus Hangman Part 2 is a really great match for Forbidden Door. And Forbidden Door just drew 1 million people, but Ospreay did over $1 million in sales. So Ospreay versus Hangman, if you want a show to have a match that people want to see, Osprey versus Hangman Part 2 at Forbidden Door would be a great main event. Or Moxley versus Osprey at Forbidden Door. That would be the match to have. So that's why I think Hangman's going to win, but I think they're going to do a triple threat match, and that would be a bad idea. But I also think that could like be a that could be a thing where it solves a bunch of problems. You give Osprey something, you give Hangman something, you make it more unpredictable. But then again, it's almost like why have an Owen Hart tournament? Why have all that really if you're going to get if you're going to try to have an answer to a if you're going to have an answer to an end result, why do something like make people wait a little bit more, or be like, why should the result why should it go from inconclusive to inconclusive? Really, I don't think that's a good idea, but I think that's what AEW is going to do. So overall, when I look at this card, I'm going to say Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, Don Callis, Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford, Undisputed Kingdom, Mercedes Moné, FTR, Hurt Syndicate, Tony Storm, Ricochet, Team Death Riders, and the Young Bucks, Okada, and Osprey. And overall, I'll just do this, that, the first match, Megan Bayne, Penelope Ford versus Harley Cameron and Jay, that's like a C to me. Undisputed Kingdom versus Don Callis family, that's a C plus. Jamie Hayter versus Mercedes Moné, that's a C minus to me. FTR versus Stan Garcia, that's like a C to me. Hurt Syndicate versus the Sons of Texas, that's a C plus to me. Tony Storm versus Marina Shigurakawa, that's a C minus to me. It's predictable. Mark Briscoe versus Ricochet, that's like a C minus to me. Anarchy in the Arena, I would say that's like and that's probably a B plus to me. Okada versus Speedball, that's like a C minus to me. And then Hangman versus Osprey, that's roughly like an A minus. So when I kind of take all the grades together, I would kind of say that, I would say that this card is really like a C. Like, it's around like a C, C minus. It's more of a C minus. I'll give it a C minus because the build hasn't been strong. So, that's not good for, your show, really. But, that's my predictions, and that's how I rate the card, really. And, I've done my fantasy booking video a few weeks back about, how I would book the show. And the matches that I would have. But this is already decent. You're going to have like a few more matches on the dark match, type of thing, really. And I also pray that they have the show and they wrap this up at like 4 hours or, 4.5 hours. But they also have to think about like not making the show way too long or everything like that, really. So this is okay. This is like a C minus level card with the build and everything like that. So definitely, like I said, it's okay for me. There's things that I want to see, but it will be something that I feel that, is going to be one of these things where they have to really evaluate how they do pay-per-view cards and how they build to stories and feuds. And ultimately, they have to really talk to the writers and other people and be like, hey, you know what, we got to have more like story and emotion going into this. How we're going to use Ring of Honor, Collision, and Dynamite consistently, that like 5 hours of television every single week, and build things up, really, And then also, like I've said before, and I'll say it again, they do way too many special shows. Like, they have like a Colorado show, they have like a Kent Washington show, they have Grand Slam in Mexico, they may do Blood and Guts before the AEW All In show. So you may have like 3 or 4 special shows before All In, and then you got to ask yourself, are the special shows taken away from the overall, like, AW thing? So that's all I got to say, really. It definitely could be better, but I'm all right with this card.